Okay, how do we get this parameter? Okay, uh, in offshore we have two method. The first one we call it a seabed based method. Seabed based basically like what we do, when we are doing soil investigation on land, where we put all the equipment into the seabed and then we operate it from vessel. It can be using hydraulic, vehicle, and everything. Okay. Um, this one has a very advantage, or because it's quick, that we can just deploy it and then run it. But of course, this is high limitation of typically is what do you call it, a shallow depth can be penetrate. Okay, and then if you want to go more deep, or there is a hard layer, the second method we call it a downhole method, where the equipment, the rig, the drilling is we perform from the vessel, but in this case, of course, we need what you call it, seabed. We call it a seabed frame to hold the pipe, and then of course here there is a the derrick here is need to be flexible, can move. This is the sample of this. The derrick is basically the same with the derrick on the what do you call it, on the jacob, but in mini size. Because for the geotech operation, we need only 150 to 200 meter, maximum is 250. Okay, it's not, we don't need as big as rig, where it can goes all the way to 4,000, 5,000 meter below the seabed. Okay, it's a mini derrick of the rig, and then this is a top drive, and then this is the one that the seabed frame that I mentioned just now is to hold the pipe, And then the other thing that we need for the geotech vessel is, of course, is we call it a motion compensator. Here, unlike in the rig is a station. The platform is not moved up and down, but is on the vessel, it depends on the water tide or wave or current. So the vessel can be moved up and down. That's why we need this compensator. So basically, when the vessel move up, the drill part is not also move, it's not pull. So it's hold steadily. Okay, so this is typical. This is just a nice in the. This is all the equipment that we have been in Java, Elitia here. And then this is another vessel. We have a bigger rig here, but also a same arrangement here. Okay. In addition of this, okay, right? We continue. Just now we talk about how we get the sample. Now, which vessel to be used? Okay, this vessel, there are many types of vessel, from the small one to the big one, and then it's purely, I mean, it's really depend on the water depth where we are going to use to take the sample, basically. Okay, for the near shore or for the shallow river bank, we use you can use LCT, because this is a flat here, so it can have a very shallow draft, so it can go LCT for this kind of area. But when you go deeper, say more than 10 meter, 12 meter, we have to go to 4 mooring vessel here, because we need a stability. Here we need a deep, big draft here, at least 4 meter, 5 meter. If we use the LCT, we can have a 2 seki, 2 seki, because of a flat. And especially when you go to the deeper water, more than 20 meter. Okay, and then if we go to more than 120 meters, 120 to 120 meters, we need to go to the DP mode. DP mode means is a dynamic positioning. So the vessel have the navigation in the vessel, connect to the satellite, and then it lock the location. When the vessel move, the engine will adjust the location so it doesn't move anywhere. For mooring is we switch off the engine, and then the vessel position is held by the anchor, 4 or 5 anchor, at least 4. Yeah, some vessel have a 5 anchor. So that's the difference between this. three different. And then for the seabed mode, we don't really okay. We can we use this kind of small vessel basically, right? Also in the vessel, we need to have an onboard laboratory. Why we have this? Because unlike when we do a soil investigation in land, yeah, when we have not enough data or when the data is not enough, we can come back tomorrow. We can come back next week. But on offshore, the mobilization is the main cause of this campaigns. So we need to ensure that the data we collect is correct. I mean, is adequate, and of course, is meet the quality. Okay, we do that. We extrude the sample on board, and then we do the test. Start from classification, and then the strength, also the indicia, the UU or Modovan, and then also, and then after that, the sample we store it, bring to a land lab or for onshore lab for the further testing. Some tests cannot be done offshore basically because of the vessel keep moving, and like a console definitely we cannot do it, or the other tests that longer. So we send it to onshore lab. But we need to ensure that before we move to location, the data is good and then the data is enough. Okay. The result of the offshore geotechnical investigation, of course, what we call it a boring log here. This is one of the sample of the where we have for the Jacob rig. Yeah, typical borehole plan is each leg we have at least one sample or one CPT. For the high risk location where we have a possible punch through, it is recommended to have one sample, one borehole for each leg. Or for the in the simple area, well-known area like what do you call it, Java Sea, Norton, it can be have one sample at the center and one CPT. But this is a typical the most common. I mean, the cost of the one CPT is not much compared than the cost of mobilization, right? Once we know the soil data, and then we can do the geotechnical engineering. In this case, we focus on a lake penetration analysis to see how the when we bring rigs there, how the rig being in place, is it is safe enough, and then it will affect the later on. Of course, this one is for the approval of the location. If it is too risky, and then the insurance company is not willing to cover it, then we need to do a kind of set specific assessment for this, or by adjusting the preload procedure, which is our friend from MWS normally doing this. Okay, a little bit on the Jacob rig. Jacob rig is has a 3 independent leg. At the bottom it has a spark can, which is basically is a footing, yeah, simple footing, but it is a huge, can be 15 to 20 meter width, and then it has an independent each here, and then this is the parameter that we need for our analysis. Start from the area, and then of course the volume as well, and then what is the intended load. Intended load here is a two type. Is a light, we call it light shipwreck, is basically the weight of the rig without preload, and then the preload, the intended preload. Maybe you see in the next slide here. This is the Jacob rig installation. First, after we bring the rig into the site after towing, first we call it the rig. We can see here the rig is still floating. The hull is still floating, and then lowering down the leg, we call it a soft pin. And then after that, lift the hull, not much, half a meter to 1 meter only. And then when we lift this one, all the weight of this is transferred to leg. Leg penetrate further here. Just now is the soft pin here. Then move to this A from this one. And then after that, we do the preloading. This is this one is based on the weight of the rig, self-rig of the rig. And then we do the prodding. How we do the prodding normally is we put the water into the ballast of the rig. And then we do the prodding until this point. Okay, until we ensure that the rig is stable enough, and then we do unload, remove the preloading, move to here, and then after that the rig can be the platform can be raised to the intended safe operation. If there is a near the platform here, this one must be higher than the platform. There is this one it depends on the chassis also of the platform. Okay, right, and then you can see here there is a gap between maximum preload to the load during drilling. This is maximum preload. This is safe rate, and then this is a load about during the operation. So this one we call it safe margin. But we know that this foundation is stable enough because we already loaded up to this point, to B point. This is the one that I mentioned just now, is a maximum preload. Is a Q. Okay. Knowing the soil parameter, knowing the rig parameter, and then you can do the analysis together. Now, in the jackup industry, this normally we refer to the SNEMI and ISO here. There are different type of failure mechanism here. Okay, basically the footing is the same like a shallow foundation. But the difference is when we design a shallow foundation, we design at a limit equilibrium. We calculate the ultimate capacity. After that, we divide the safety factor, maybe half, or become 1/3, safety factor 2 or 3, and then we only load foundation to 1/3 of the capacity. Basically, it's just stable here. But for the rig, we load it all the way to fail. So in this case, when the jackup rig penetrate, this one we fail the soil, we push the soil down until it reach maximum capacity here. Until it's reached the ultimate capacity of the soil here higher than the maximum preload here. So in this case, we always work on the ultimate capacity. Right. So there will be a difference with the shallow foundation because of that. For the simple uniform soil and layered soil with the strength is not significant different, we can use the same approach as a conventional approach as a shallow foundation footing. But when we have a layered soil, this is what happened when we call it punch-through type of failure mechanism. In this case, we have a hard layer of stronger layer overlaying a weaker layer. In this case, the mode of failure is not governed by this layer anymore, but at the below layer plus the friction along this. So different mechanism, not like this anymore. And then the other one is most common also is a squeezing. So basically, the spark can just push the soil. When we have a strong layer, a soft layer sandwiched by a too strong layer here. So this strong layer, when the rig penetrate, it just displace the soil. So the calculation, of course, will be different. We will see later on in one of the case studies. And then, of course, the combination of this mode of failure. Okay, a quick one. I just give, this is suggested by Dr. Pata, to give illustration how we do this analysis. Okay, just a quick one here. When this is the start of the preloading, we have a case where we have a uniform clay layer here, a sand and clay layer. And this is what happened when the rig being in place penetrate. This is the first at this depth, the location we calculate using a general shear failure. And then when the rig go deeper, still general shear failure, GSE. And then at this point, the backflow happen. What do you mean by backflow is the soil on the top of the rig collapse here, so fill the soil on top of it. Just now it's like this, now it's filled. And then because of the soil, because of the additional load of the soil, the strength of the strength is reduced. Okay, it continue penetrate, approaching the still general shear failure after this, until this one is quite close to the sand layer, where we have a squeezing. This layer is just being squeezed out. Okay, being squeezed. And then we have a now the what do you call it, the spud can sit on the sand layer and then continue. Now still general shear failure, but on the sand. Just now on the clay, this one is on the sand. Different formula. All of these formula have a different formula. You can always refer to SNEME and ISO. The formula is there. So we just need to understand this formula that we are going to use for a different depth or for different method. Okay, we continue with a general shear failure at sand, and then until the spud can quite close to the interface between sand and clay here, where the punch through will happen. So basically, the punch through here is governed by this, not by sand anymore, but the underlaying of clay layer. What happened when punch through is, of course, it drop the strength. This is what we afraid. If this one drop is too much, it will. And then there is what we call it uncontrolled rapid leg run, which is something that we avoid. And then of course later on there will be some if this is happen in our side, there will be adjustment how the preload being done for this location. And then the rig will be continues to penetrate until the ultimate capacity of this depth is higher than the preload, and then the rig just stop and stabilize there. Okay, so the punch through here, it will affect how the preload procedure, like I mentioned just now. It can the MWS later on will decide, oh, this is can be preload. We need to do 1 cycle, 2 cycle, or 4 cycle, or 80 cycle mean the loaded up to say 1 cycle to 50%. 50% mean is after from the light sheet weight to the maximum. So they load it up to here first. See, they stop it here, and then they wait for another 4 hours, and then unload the preload, and then continue loading again until it be safe enough, rather than just rapid. So of course it will affect the time to do the preload or the rig emplacement. If a straightforward location can be done by 6 to 12 hours, but a very complex location can be days, 3 or 4 days. Yeah. And then still after 3 and 4 days, we cannot reach the maximum preload. This is something that everybody want to avoid that situation. Okay, until it penetrates to the. Okay, why we worry about the punch through? Of course, the consequence cost is tremendous. Can be easily 1 million to 10 million per failure. This is based on the previous record, and then of course a delay and reputation of the oil company client. Okay, now let's see case by case of the geotech. The first one I here is when we have here is the punch through happen because of the selection of design parameter. What happened here is the design parameter selected for leg penetration analysis is following the design line for the pile, which is for the pile. Of course, we can take a general, because for the pile, what we want to know is the average. I mean, because the friction, the unit friction of the location. When the engineer do the leg penetration analysis using this line, the straight line here, what happened is the spud can is just steadily stabilized to reach the maximum depth here. But we see here that there is a up and down strength here, especially shown by the by CPT data here. And then when we need to consider it, this one, because this is actual case. And then what happened is, yes, the rig is just following this strength. So it's not stabilized. At maximum preload here, the price through happen, occur here, and then leg run. And then in this location, what we learn is, of course, as much as we want to simplify the data, yeah, because as an engineer, it's not good also to have every meter have a layer, but fail to see or to understand the detail of the strength here can be a fatal catastrophic here. Can what through failure. Okay. The second case here I would have is when the rig is approaching a revisit. We call it revisit. This is a platform or platform. The rig has come here before. This is a contour, a bathymetric contour. You can see there is a crater here because of the rig. And then the new rig, it just happened not this. It cannot be. The ideal one is if the same rig can go here and then hit with this one. Sometimes it cannot be done because the well is full here, so the rig need to be shift in order to get the targeted well here, or the rig is not the same with the previous one. The previous one is a normal, or the contract is win by another rig. So there will be a different, all the new SPATCAN cannot go into the footprint. So what happened here is, if the half of the rig, portion of the rig stay on the Phrygian soil, which is stronger, and then half goes to the footprint, which is basically is a hole that created by previous emplacement and then filled by the mud or by new deposit, which is much softer than the existing one. So in this case, the leg can easily slip into the what do you call it, the crater. When it's happened, it will, and then that can easily damage the leg of the rig. So in addition of this footprint, normally when we revisit to the platform, we also have a nearby structure here that we need to consider, because this one is the spot can be 15 or 20 meter width, and then you move, you penetrate below, and then you can, if this one is too close, any movement on the clamp on the pipeline can crack the pipeline. This one you need to be considered also. Also for the pile foundation of the platform, because of this spot can displace the soil that's huge, and there will be additional lateral bending here on the platform, which is we need to consider as well. Okay. One thing that we need to do, okay, unlike the previous one, the normal leg penetration analysis basically is a 1D, because the load is one direction on the axial only, and then the soil within the SPATCAN can be homogeneous. So we can move, we can do it we can do it approach using a one-dimensional analysis, vertical only. But in this case, when we have a crater, we have a footprint, and nearby, and then other structures, it's not 1D anymore, it's not 3D, and then we just have to take it with the 3D modeling here. We can, there are many, but one of them is Plaxis. Okay, but we need to know, to understand that Plaxis and some others, majority of the finite element has a limitation. Most of this software, finite element is a small strain model, so it cannot in the SPATCAN movement is a large displacement. So there are techniques to modify it, and then if this technique is not workable, of course we need to go to the full finite element, or you call it a Euralian, which is can model a large strain by adjusting the mesh. I think at the current stage, we are happy enough with this small strain with the techniques, we call it a risk in place technique, and then research in the US showing that this one is the result is quite close to the what do you call it, centrifuge. Right. So another I think this is the last case I would share here is the false alarm due to the different selection of the method. What we have here is a layering, soil layering, or we have a sand clay, sand clay layer here. When we do a normal analysis, what we have is something like this. So when we have a sand, this is what we get, and then punch through, drop here, and then we have another sand here, and drop again here. And then we end up by 20 to 36, very deep, which is, I mean, based on the calculation, yes, how it is. But if you look deeper, this is a situation where we have sand, and then clay below here. This thickness is around 5 meters. And then the sputtken that we have is 20 meters or 17 meters here. So this is less than 1/3. I mean, SNEMI suggested that 1/3 it can be a squeeze. So what happened is, this when we put the sputtken below above this sand layer and this layer just displace this one, squeeze this layer out, and then what we have is something like this sand layer, a thicker sand layer here, because the sand layer move down, this one is squeezed out, this one moved down, and we have a thicker sand layer, and then we get this curve, the green one instead of the gray one. So using the gray one, it will stop here. It don't go deep here, because it looks funny, because we are asking by the client at the time, your curve is wrong. Why is wrong? Because it's how come the peak on the sand layer, on the clay layer here, on the soft, it's not on the sand. Something wrong with the curve. Then after we explain that this is a different mechanism, because what happened here is this two sand layer is combined become one, and that's why it stopped at that particular new sand layer. And then yes, after they bring it there, and then the actual penetration is just 85. It's just within our prediction, 8.2 and 8.5. This is in offshore Sarawak, by the way. I think okay, this is what I want to share to you tonight. Okay, we learn about how we do survey, all the way to the what is a hazard. Okay, I mean, okay, to summarize what we have talked today, first is on the survey. So basically, for the rig entry site, we need to do a geophysics survey to collect data qualitatively. The scope can be analog and 2D high-rise, and then the purpose is to get the geohazard map. Using this geohazard map, we check the well location is safe enough to drill, optimum enough to drill, and then after we finalize the location, and then we bring the geotech vessel. The geotech, the purpose is to collect data quantitatively to obtain the soil parameters. We know the soil layering from geophysics, but we don't know how strong is it. We know what kind of type, indication of type, whether that one is a granular or cohesive, but what is the strength, we don't know. That's why we need to do the geotech. And then after that, what is a scope? Can be sampling and in situ testing. And when we have from the geohazard map showing that there is a shallow gas, we need to do a pilot hole to ensure that the absence of the shallow gas. Here the absence. So the approach is we select the location that there is no gas, but we still need to ensure that there is actually no gas, because when there is a gas and then we do sampling here, it will endanger our people working on the deck. It can be a burst, it can the tools can be fly, or the gas can create a fire or a poison. And then what we have here is a boring log, and then we do the analysis to get the leg penetration curve. Using the leg penetration curve, the client will bring it to rig, and then rig will check, oh, this is a safe location. So basically for the location approval. Okay, here's the first one. Okay, in general, from the survey that what we can say, but of course, from the case study we present just now, this is there are many points that we can see, but I want to highlight 4 points here. Is the first, why we need both geophysical and geotechnical. Basically, geophysical, we get overall pictures, but we don't know the how strong is it, and then we need a geotechnical. Geotechnical also alone is also not safe, because yes, what we collect at geotechnical is a spark location, but surrounding it, whether there is a channel, or how the what is is there any what do you call it, coral nearby. So combination of geophysical and geotechnic need to be done for the drilling site. And then, as much as we want to simplify the data, but failure to see or to understand the details on the leg, on the string, it can be fatal, like a punch through. So always be careful when you have, or can you see a hard layer, thin hard layer on the soft deposit. This is normally will create a leg run because of this hard layer. That's why personally I like to have a CPT and H leg. So using a CPT, we have a continuous profile, and then we know that this kind of, where possible, it could have a leg run because of this hard layer within a soft deposit. Okay, be careful also on the selection of the method. Yes, we understand we can go detail on the selection of the parameter, but the method also meant we see the third case using a different method and can have a different leg penetration curve. Okay, and then of course one thing that I want to highlight here is the appreciation that geophysical and geotechnical survey are not as seen as important by client or by others because the value is much low compared than AEPC. I think that's all for the tonight. I give floor back to Dr. Partha.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Danny, for a very illustrative presentation. Probably you can unshare the screen, Danny. Now we will
Sorry.
try. Can you unshare the screen? Take
Oh,
out
yeah.
the PPT.
Stop sharing, yeah.
Yeah, stop sharing. Okay.
Okay.
There are a few questions on the Q&A. I try to read those questions. Probably you can answer those questions.
Yes, hopefully.
And to all the participants, we will share the Google link form, Google link. If you can kindly copy that, you can fill up your details. Probably you will get the PPT copy to the emails. So please kindly copy the Google form that is posted on the chat now, and try to fill up your contact details. You will get the PPTs. So let me just go through some few questions on the chat, Danny, so you can try to answer them.
Yep.
So the first question is, what is the depth up to which your sub-bottom profile data is required during the geophysical survey?
Sorry again. Come again, please.
What is the depth of sub-bottom profiler data that is required for the assessment of geohazard during the jackup emplacement?
It varies. Sub-bottom profiler can go as deep as 100 meters when we have a uniform soft soil. But when we have a coral or hard layer near the surface, it can stop the penetration. But in general, it's good enough up to 50 meter, I would say. Okay. Where the spark can unlikely go that deep, yeah.
Yep.
So within the spark can penetration.
Right. So what is the spacing of survey lines during a 3 kilometer by 3 kilometer survey? You show that.
Yes. We use 100, and then the other one is can be 400 or 500. But you need one shallow grid.
Okay. So the other question we have is whether magnetometer will be okay, or 3-axis magnetoradiometer is required. So I'm not sure about this unusual practice is the magnetometer.
Magnetometer is basically when we run it, they will highlight or spot what object that has a metal content. So in this case, if you have a wellhead or the location, a pipeline, or some even like I said, vessel wake, or even bomb, we can see it metal related, but it's not. We cannot get it clearly for cable. Cable we have a difficulty to get it, but we can get it from we call it the side scan sonar. On the radio, I'm not too sure, because for the along the way I never run a radio basically. Maybe from the participant would be can help to answer as well, because it's the first time for me. We can leave it one first.
Go to the next one, sir. How do you evaluate the seismic parameter for carrying out the seismic analysis for geophysical survey? Probably the velocity, the sound velocity. So it may be around 1600 meter per second that is to be evaluated or fixed for carrying out the geophysical survey. So I think that's the question.
So what is the question?
The velocity for the geophysical survey.
Oh, that one, the velocity. I cannot. I need to check with my colleague from geophysics. Later on, I can get back, but I cannot get a spot answer
probably here. Approximately be around 1600 meter per second.
1600. Oh yeah. You know better.
Yes. In order to do the probabilistic seismic hazard assessment for site-specific seismic analysis, do we need to do any specific geotechnical investigations? That's for the PSHA studies.
Oh, right. Okay, for PHSA, I mean that one is a zero wave velocity. Yeah. Okay. Zero wave velocity. Yes, but we cannot get from seismic. We just have it to run. Either that one is a seismic cone or a PS logging to get this zero wave. We cannot get the zero wave velocity from sub-button profiler.
The geotech investigations. If you have a CPT data, so probably you can interpret the shear wave velocity.
Yes, there is a correlation between CPT and shear wave velocity, or even from the shear strength to the shear wave velocity. But normally for the earthquake-prone area, client are willing to pay to get this what the actual shear wave velocity profile.
Right. Next question we have is how do we consider the effect of SPUTCAN on the PSI input, that's for your PY, the interaction of SPUTCANs for the PY, degradation of PY, really.
So basically, that one is when SPUTCAN penetrate, you studies either the one is a model in lab or in numerical and centrifuge, showing that half of diameters is affected, half of diameter. So there is we can zone the area. Okay, we can zone the area around the SPUTCAN perimeters. Okay, if the pile is close to the within the disturbed area, there is what do you call it? Numerical study. They have a kind of correlation curve where they develop it from the numerical modeling. So you can use this one to reduce or reduce, what do you call it? Correct the value of the strength of the particular soil in this in the affected area, and then use the strength, the corrected strength to generate the PY.
The next question we have is what are the special precautionary measures to be taken care during conducting an offshore geotechnical investigations? So, precautionary measures during the offshore investigations in terms of safety, in terms of quality of the vessels, and the equipments you use?
We have a standard, what do you call it, operating. The safety here, I would say for the safety is, of course, we need to ensure that where we drill the borehole, when we lower the equipment, have to be safe, like not from there is no harmful between below, and then typical or normal safety that applicable for other operation on the rig, we mostly we adopt to it.
So what are the measures taken to avoid any settlement of the seabed frame? Probably it is much heavier than the
Yes.
strength of the soil.
Okay. What we normally do is yes, the first sample is very critical. Okay. So when we know that that top layer is very soft, we always maintain that the seabed frame wire in tension. But after it reach the deeper layer, where we need what do you call it, reaction from the seabed frame, we measure how much is settled, and then we do a correction later on. But of course, when we have a very soft, we need to what we can we do CPT first before we go going the sample. What we have is we know that from the echo sender, the water depth, and then 1 meter below, we just push the CPT out, and then we lower the seabed frame to push the CPT to get the top 1 meter very soft data.
So can you give some reference to interpret CPT graph sheets? Usually the Robertson Canadian Geotechnical 1990 paper, that is still a global. Is there any other interpretation charts that you are using?
There are many from Maine, from there are many. I think we have 4 or 5 that are in use at the moment. We can say later on. I can send it to you.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you can.
So is there any softwares to analyze this leg penetration analysis and present the curve? Commercially available software?
I'm not sure any, because I recall one last time. That one they don't sell it. They have it, but they sell it what a license for 1 month, for 1 year, but they don't really sell the software like that. Of course, McClellan developed the first one using a Fortran, and then grow, modify, improve it all the way until now. Which and then but we can have a similar algorithm to use. For us, we use VBA in Excel, and then so far we are happy with it.
Yeah. So even a manual calculation is a simple bearing capacity.
The hand calculation is a yes. Of course, one time you need to check it. I mean, sometimes the result is not what is not realistic. You need to check it manually with hand. But we are happy with our in-house template at the moment.
What are the types of geophysical investigations usually conducted before? I think the first part of your presentation covers all the methods: bathymetry, the side scan sonar, the bottom profiler. We can skip that. Do we still need geotechnical survey for a revisit after several years to be carried out? So there is a footprint already available. Do we require to do a geotechnical survey for a revisit?
If the SPATCAN, the old data is within the SPATCAN area, we can omit it, and then, but if there is outside, and then we can check our geophysics data. How is the geophysical? How is the soil layering, lateral variation? Is there any lateral variation? And if there is, even if there is no lateral variation, we check whether that one is has a potential, or like hard layer followed by soft layer. So it's depend. We cannot say it. There is no yes or no. We have to just see it case by case. But in most of the case, yes, as long as we have a debris survey, and then the location is enough, is we can some warranty surveyor willing to do it. Unlike unless if you go to the other side of the re-entry, I mean rig entry, the other side.
Yeah. So probably we can take the last question. So why the survey lines is uniform? Should we reduce the spacing as we go towards the well location? When
Oh yeah, yes. No, I mean in the center grid. I mean this is just an illustration.
Yeah.
In most of the case, close to the well, we have a closer rate. But there are in most of the case we don't know yet whether is our client don't know where they're going to, is it the well location or not. So sometimes when they have a quite sure, or this is my well is not going to far away based on our previous borehole within the same field or nearby well, so we can have a closer grid near the well.
Okay. I think we can conclude that with that. Thank you, Danny Tammy, on behalf of Indian Geotechnical Society Bangalore chapters. I really appreciate, and it's a wonderful presentation. Now, for all the participants, kindly copy the Google Forms and fill up your details. You will get the copy of these presentations. So with this, I want to conclude. I will hand over the floor to our Amla for a vote of thanks.
Amla? All right. Okay. Thank you for having me, and thank you for all the participants that are asking questions, or thank you for listening. I hope we learned something tonight.
Absolutely. Amla, can you please propose the vote of thanks?
Yeah, hi, sir. I Amla, on behalf of Indian Geotechnical Society Bangalore chapter, would like to propose vote of thanks to Mr. Danny Tammy, Vice President, Java Offshore. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable time and this lecture, and all the participants who participated in this event and turned this into a successful one. So I hope everyone filled the Google form which we shared in the chat box. And thank you once again, and stay connected with IGS Bengaluru chapter for upcoming event details. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Danny. Thank you to all the participants.
Thank you. Thank you all. Good night.